Some truths don't ask to be forgiven, they just wait to be admitted. I avoided this conversation with myself for a long time. Years have passed since, like a prayer, hit the airwaves, and still on certain nights my breath catches the same way it did back then, standing in a dark studio listening to the choir draw air before the first note. Late 80s, the end of one life, the start of another. People like clean labels. They call it a breakthrough, a reinvention. The moment I finally took control, my first album on my own label, proof that I could run the whole machine myself. I let them call it that because it sounded simpler than the truth. The truth was messier. I was moving on instinct, and sometimes I was hurting people, including myself, just to make sure I still felt real. In 1988 and 1989, I was visibly winning and privately cornered. After Like a Virgin and True Blue, I didn't need to prove I could make hits. Radio already knew me. MTV already had my face locked into rotation. What scared me was the next question. What if everything worked and I still felt empty? What if the applause faded and there was nothing underneath it but static? I had just come out of a marriage that looked glamorous to strangers and felt like living inside a storm. When the paperwork was finally done, I pretended it was just ink. I wasn't above it. I was raw, angry, and lonely in a way that never shows up in photographs. I was more afraid of silence than of the stage. Silence meant I had to hear myself. Silence meant I couldn't hide behind lights, beats, or a crowd chanting my name like a spell. I fed off reaction even when I hated myself for needing it. I liked power. I liked being dangerous. I liked watching executives, critics, and fans argue about whether they loved me or feared me. That sounds ugly because it is. I'm not interested in polishing it. I wasn't naive. I knew what I was doing. That's where the shame sits. I knew religion was a nerve in America, and I pressed it on purpose. Not only because of my past, but because I understood attention as a system. Touch the forbidden symbol and people will stare until it hurts. I told myself it was honesty. Sometimes it was. Sometimes it was a weapon. Fear kept people at a distance, and distance felt safer than love. Like a prayer. Came from a knot I'd carried since childhood. Catholic discipline, guilt sewn into desire, the smell of incense, cold pews, the sense that someone was always watching and judging. And then losing my mother, and never finding a clean place to put that loss. No chart position fills that kind of space. You can sell out arenas and still feel the same ache when the lights go down. The song is a conversation with God that isn't polite. It's intimate, it's needy, it blurs devotion and longing until they're hard to separate. I knew the double meaning when I wrote it. I wanted religious language to sound physical because that's how it lived in me. Prayer wasn't purity, it was hunger, it was bargaining. It was reaching out in the dark without knowing who might answer. The work was physical. My throat dried out from singing until words stopped sounding like sentences and started sounding like nerves. My shoulders stayed tight, like I was bracing for impact. I'd sit on the studio floor with my shoes kicked off, listening to playback, feeling my pulse lock into the beat. I'd laugh at something small, then feel the urge to cry for no clear reason. Pressure does that. It turns your body into a lie detector. Patrick Leonard wasn't just a producer. He was someone who refused to worship me, and I needed that more than I wanted it. He helped shape a sound that felt bigger and older, gospel meeting pop, guitars pushing against a choir. He could stop and say calmly, "You're hiding here." No drama, no flattery, just a clean sentence like a doctor pointing to an x-ray. I respected him for it and resented him for seeing through the act. Stephen Bray knew me from the early New York days, before there was any safety net, before the industry figured out how to package me. He knew my ambition, my temper, the parts of me that bite. He could push me into a fight and turn that fight into fuel. We trusted each other, and we hurt each other, and we called it collaboration. Sometimes I think he loved the storm in me more than the person. Sometimes I did too. There were moments I used him the same way I used the audience, pulling, provoking, demanding, then pretending it was nothing. Mary Lambert came in to direct the video, and the room changed temperature. She understood symbols. She wasn't chasing scandal, she was building a language. Her calm made my excuses sound thin. She treated me like an author, not a headline. And that made me feel responsible. It also made me feel exposed. When she disagreed, she went quiet. When she spoke, it was precise. Not be brave, but be clear. The video was never casual. It was a deliberate collision. Faith, race, sexuality, violence, the things America pretends don't touch while building entire lives around the friction. I knew certain images would trigger alarms. I knew people would call it blasphemy without trying to hear what I was saying, and I knew a part of me wanted that reaction. The noise proved I could still move the world. The most concrete thing I regret isn't poetic, it's business. I signed a massive endorsement deal that sold a clean, harmless version of me to Middle America. At the same time, I knew exactly what the Like a Prayer video would be. I can't honestly say I was surprised by the fallout. I expected it. I let one group believe in a safe version of me while another version was already striking a match. I left other people standing in front of a fire I knew was coming. There was a moment when I knew I'd gone too far, not when the headlines hit, but earlier, in a small screening room, watching the footage and feeling it in my gut. I understood that this wouldn't just be an argument about a music video. It would be about whether a woman had the right to speak about God in her own voice with her own body. I could have pulled back. I could have made it safer. I didn't. I told myself I was protecting the work. I was also protecting the rush of being unstoppable. I used faith the same way I used attention. That sentence still makes me flinch, which is how I know it's true. I took something sacred to me and made it loud enough for the whole country to fight over. I can say it opened conversations. I can say it challenged hypocrisy. Both are true. This is also true. I liked the spotlight on the wound. I liked being the one holding the match. What I wanted to say was simple, even if I wrapped it in gasoline. Prayer can be messy. Holiness doesn't have to be sterile. Shame doesn't make you better, it just makes you easier to control. I wanted girls raised on fear to hear that they didn't owe silence to anyone. I wanted them to understand that desire isn't automatically a crime. What I couldn't say then was how scared I was of being irrelevant without conflict, how often I confused truth with attack because attack gives control, how often I mistook distance for strength, how much I wanted comfort and didn't know how to ask for it without feeling weak. When you live inside cameras, weakness feels like blood in the water. I'm not offering closure. I'm not asking to be forgiven. I'm not sure it was all justified. I only know that, like a prayer, was a door I opened myself, and it slammed shut behind me loud enough that the echo still lives in my rooms. Some days I think I was brave. Other days I think I was just hungry for the feeling that no one could stop me. I live somewhere between those versions now, older, quieter, still carrying the noise, finally tired enough to stop decorating it.